guys, glad you're here. I haven't talked about my time in the Capital Wasteland. You may think I have twice, but you're mistaken. I have never talked about Vault 101 or Vault 112. Ever. If you think I have, you may have been a subject of Vault 106. I was looking for someone very important to me when I discovered Vault 106. Despite my general vault aversion, there was a chance they were in there, so I didn't hesitate. I went into the vault. Unfortunately, Vault 106 was guarded by mole rats. The animals of the Capital Wasteland did not trust me yet, tried to thin their numbers a little bit. I did let them keep their dignity by not using their skin to make purses, and instead left them as food for the irradiated dogs and bears that roam this area. Oddly enough, Vault 106, like Vault 22, had a sign indicating there was a vault here. It was a small one, but present nonetheless. However, unlike Vault 22, and like most vault entrances, it was hidden in a cave. Now that I think about it, that was a poor design choice. If there was a cave-in, dwellers probably lacked the equipment to escape. I digress though. The vault door was shut, so I was expecting it to still be inhabited, but it seemed abandoned, and in real disrepair. Most vaults are, but this one was odd. So many pipes were cracked open and spewing gas. I was really hoping it wasn't the air purification system busted, then realized I had been breathing aerated air for quite some time and stopped caring. Whatever it was spewing was no cause for alarm. However, I did find a little bit of poetry that described the air as tasting blue. I picked open a locked door to what I believe to be a storage closet that they shoved their grunt doing admin work in, considering the lack of seating, confined corridors, singular computer, and lockers. I would actually love to work in here if it weren't for the window looking in. At least it was decorated for Halloween. I deduced it was a security admin by the one remaining file on the computer. It was an alert about a problem with the air filter, which might cause a slight odor to the air. I thought that seemed normal until it ended with reporting people acting irregularly. That was my first guess this was not a control vault. I thought about covering my mouth with my shirt, but I was confident that if the experiment were gas-based, it probably ran out like a decade into the experiment. I was less confident when the Richard Nixon doll I burned started speaking to me once more. Even less so when I started hallucinating. I assumed I was alone, that everyone in this vault had died based on the interior. I had my biggest surprise when I did realize there were still people down here. I was attacked by a survivor. I thought it was a hallucination until I felt pain. I defended myself against anyone who attacked me, as I was left no choice, but I felt bad about it. I assumed they had been exposed to the gas much longer than me, and their sanity was long gone. I wanted to leave, but if the person I was searching for was down here, I needed to get them out. I kept going down and found more survivors. Something about them struck me as off, besides the fact that they only used melee weapons. One of them had a Chinese officer sword, which struck me as particularly odd. How did they get one of those? Richard Nixon told me maybe it was a trophy that was brought down, but I didn't quite buy that. I went further down and found the living quarters. I don't know what most of the non-labeled rooms are for, so I'm assuming they were multi-purpose. But at the back of one I found a cool bobblehead. I'd found many of these through time, so I'd started a collection. This was the science one. It also spoke to me. I assumed that would wear off, but the effects of what it said to me never would. I made my way to the overseer's office thinking maybe the person I was looking for would be there. I did find someone. An old enemy of mine, but there was the hallucination, of course. The terminal confirmed that this was in fact an experimental vault, and it seemed the experiment was dumping gases into the air and seeing how residents reacted. A terminal I found deep in the vault made it seem like it was supposed to be spread through most of the vault with a few safe areas. However, I think busted pipes might have spread it more randomly. That is speculation, though. I found one note written by one of the afflicted that seems like it makes them feel really good, like super relaxed and happy. So I guess that was good. However, I found another note written during the event. Things got so out of hand that security told everyone not afflicted to lock themselves in the room while they got the riffraff under control, which I suppose meant things were getting violent. Supposedly the afflicted also can't read, but they can write since I found that note written by someone high out of their mind, and also the deepest poetry I had ever read. I kept going and found the science lab. If my query wasn't in here, I would have to leave. It seemed like some of the vault doors were trying to leave themselves. A bunch of skeletons were hanging out with a mini nuke that made it seem like they were trying to blast their way out. I'm assuming they tried the vault door first and found it locked. The radiation couldn't have been a deterrent in them not leaving through there, since they're using mini nukes to try and blast through, and the surface would be radiated no matter where you emerged from. I also found the master keys to the vault, but since I had already unlocked every door with my sweet lockpicking skills. Ladies, please, stay back! They were redundant. Still, I slipped them on to pad my keyring. And that was it. I didn't find who I was looking for. I was despondent. And then I hallucinated again. The vault was nice and restored. There were lots of clean terminals around me. I booted one up, I read a message to myself. I made a convincing argument that I should sit back and accept this. It did feel really good. I read another note. It was great. I was wondering, why had I come here? I was wondering, do I care? I read a third note. I took a deep breath. It was time to surrender. My journeys, my troubles, my travels, all my vault exploration, it had come to an end. I just had to sit back and let it happen. The voice of Richard Nixon snapped me out of it. I had a mission, an obligation as an American, to get out here and finish my quest, help the people of the wasteland. I had to get out of here. My brain didn't like that. It got mad, but I had to go. The gas wore off and I was back in the real world. I started picking my way back through the entrance when I noticed a few things. There were no women. Everyone I killed was a man. I was wondering how they repopulated. That was when it hit me. The thing that was off. None of them had Pip-Boys. These weren't the Dwellers. These must have been random prospectors that wandered in and took too big of a whiff of gas and didn't have Richard Nixon to coax them out. They dressed as the Dwellers and convinced themselves they were. How about that? People actually came into Prospect. Never seen anyone else do that before except Keely. I do wonder who closed the door behind them though. And why they only attacked me and not each other. I have no idea what became the Dwellers of Vault 106. If I had to guess, they succumbed to the gas and died off. When I went to the Citadel, I found a lot more information on the vault. It has information on all the vaults in the DC area, so this won't be the last time you hear me citing it. The experiment was the gas, and it was set to release 10 days after the vault experiment started, which, given a few weeks for all the people to die off due to starvation or other factors, means this vault lasted around a month. I still have a lot to explore, and this was my first failure, but I imagine a month is an impressively fast time to collapse. Still, I bet there's a vault that failed before 24 hours were up. The vault terminal didn't just have details on the vault, but the overseer too, Dr. Albert Laris, another Vault-Tech scumbag. The terminal told me that he was a member of Vault-Tech's Psychological Research Department, but an old newspaper I stumbled across in my travels expanded on that. Not only was he head of the department, but he's also one of the leading engineers. I guess when you don't have to deal with pesky things like morality and ethics, you can really get ahead in your field. The surprising thing is, Dr. Laris gave a statement, which is the closest the public ever learned to finding out the truth of the vaults. Here's the quote. Understanding how people tick and how it can make them tick better, be happier, and become more useful members of our community is hugely valuable. I know that there are those that have challenged this, but those are so-called ethical concerns of the liberals, which you must dismiss as counterproductive and closed-minded. I am honestly shocked Vault-Tech didn't have his head on a platter after this got published. Or maybe that's how his vault got so messed up. Sabotage, which is so petty, but also so Vault-Tech. Unfortunately, we'll never know. It does make sense that this was his vault, though. He could study the psychological effects of the gas on his 95 test subjects with his 12 researchers. They were supposed to have 147 months, 12 years and 3 months, but as we all know, they didn't even need one full percentage of that. There's some more nerd stuff I'll go over real quick. Their central computer system was the Think Machine 2800X. Personally, I was a bigger fan of the 2799X. That one had a holotape drive. And the primary and secondary power supplies were respectively Rock Solid brand geothermal and a General Atomics nuclear power, which both feel like names that were not finished. Anything else about Vault 106 was lost to time, as all information was redacted and only people Dr. Laris approved could see it. Even I can't circumvent that. I do want to bring up one more thing though. It might have been a hallucination, so I'm going to put a star in the corner. One of the science rooms, the one where I found the bobblehead, was used to study a fungus, I think. The Astilago-noslin? I don't know anything about mushrooms, but here's a summary on screen for the fungi head viewers. That'll wrap up Vault 106. I'm really disappointed. Vault 106 is the first complete failure I found. Probably nobody survives. I can't prove this, but the evidence is pretty telling. Not only that, but Vault 106 was just a mess. Nothing was labeled except bathrooms and dorms. And again, why do they have gendered dorms? And a surprising lack of infrastructure. I didn't see anything resembling an infirmary or a kitchen. Just bedrooms, storage rooms, research area, and maintenance rooms. Even without the gas, this is probably still one of the worst vaults to live in. It's no wonder they all died. They probably didn't have the will to continue living through that existence. I don't blame them though. They were kind of doomed from the start. After all, the vaults were never meant to save anyone.